What's up, Internet? SB here for the Marduk report. Today I've got probably the smallest ITX case I've ever had to work on. Not necessarily the smallest case ever, just the smallest that I've dealt with. Today's case is the Gamemax Mini? Healer? I'm not really sure. I haven't actually been able to find a good direct translation for the name, so I'm just going to go with Mini Healer. I decided to pick up this case on Taobao because it's exactly the same interior as the InWin Chopin, but about a third the cost. This case is roughly about $30 US versus the 100 of the InWin case. I don't get the slick aluminum top or front panel or the color inserts, but for a price difference of this much money, I can live without it. So when I say this case is tiny, I mean it is really, really tiny. It measures 215 millimeters by 80 millimeters by 235 millimeters, giving it a volumetric size of about 4 liters. If none of that makes any sense to you, just take a look at it here next to a can of soda. Yeah, it is that small. The Mini Healer has two orientations, vertical and horizontal. This is possible via two small cross pucks that are locked on to the actual case, and an interchangeable stand. The crosses are held on by screws and are removable, and there's one on the bottom and one on the back side. For this review, I'm going to be referring to the case in a vertical position. The removable stand also doubles as a VESA mount for either 75mm or 100mm VESA mounting systems. The Mini Healer is made from plastic and steel, most likely SECC, but I can't be 100% on that. The steel only has a little bit of flex, but that's also probably due to just how small any of the steel panels are. The plastic, aside from the base system, is mostly high gloss, which I'm not a fan of, not in the least. It's nice, but I can see my fingerprints all over it, like ugh.com. The steel of the case is also surprisingly a fingerprint magnet. Be sure to keep this case in the dark corner or break out the Mickey Mouse gloves while handling it, because your fingerprints are going to end up everywhere. The rounded corners of the case give it a fairly minimal aesthetic and keep your fingers from getting sliced off, which is win-win situation. The front slash side slash top I/O ports are pretty much a standard rollout. There are two USB ports, one's USB 2.0, the other one's 3.0. Two audio jacks, headphone, microphone, and as a nice inclusion, there's also an SD card reader. The interior of the Gamemax Mini Healer is broken into two distinct compartments. In the front main area houses the motherboard and the power supply, while the rear has space for drives. The power supply that's included is a 200 watt power supply, which is 50 more than the one that's included with the InWin Chopin, but has no 80 plus certification. So if you're worried about your power supply's efficiency more than how much power it can put out at max, then this is something to take note of. Just FYI, this power supply form factor is actually a 1U Flex ATX power supply. This is not an SFX power supply, and an SFX power supply will not fit into this case. The PSU supplied here has a 24-pin connector, a 4-pin 12-volt connector, a SATA power connector, and this weird extra 4-pin connector, and two adapters. The extra header is used to connect either another SATA power connector or a mini SATA power and SATA data combo cable. This cable is only used for slim optical drives. In the rear compartment, there's space for two 2.5-inch drives, or like I just said, one optical slim drive. Both drives are secured to snap-in trays via screws, which is nice because it's simple and it's reliable. The build process was pretty straightforward for the Gamemax Mini Healer. Just make sure the PSU is in first on the front side if you decide to remove it to sleeve that rainbow of cables, as it won't fit once the motherboard is in. Another tip for building in this case is to take care with cable routing. Getting SATA cables from the front main compartment happens actually behind the front panel, which just snaps off and reveals that there are a multitude of holes for getting your cables to the back. There's a lower hole all the way at the bottom that's really a large cutout, and it's perfect for getting your SATA power cables To the back, for data cables, you're going to want to use non-right angle cables if you're connecting 2 drives. So you can use the ports closest on the motherboard. If you're connecting 1 drive though, it doesn't matter, just use whatever you've got. Once the system is built, it's just enough room for everything to fit, but just barely. I did notice though that once you actually build it, if you have it in the vertical orientation, that the stand is not the most stable thing on the planet. So it's something to definitely take note of if you have active kids, active pets, or anyone you think may knock it over. So you'll notice that on the showcase panel, as I like to call it, instead of having a normal plexi window, this actually has extruded mesh, and that's for 2 reasons. One is to actually provide airflow into the case. Outside of this large extruded panel, there's really not much airflow going in. There's a few holes on the bottom that let air go directly into the power supply, and there are a few holes on the back just to have some kind of airflow over the drives. But for the most part, in the main compartment, this is the only place that you'll actually have airflow. And secondly, it's raised to give a little more clearance for CPU coolers. As it stands right now, your max cooler height is 50 millimeters, so it's not a lot. But it is just enough for stock coolers and any other ultra compact CPU coolers. At the end of the day, the Gamemax Mini Healer, or whatever it's called, it's a solid choice for budget-minded HTPC builds, but that's about it. Like, this is most certainly not a gaming case. It has just enough room to get you by for it as an HTPC client, and for this, I give it a rating of purchase. And even if you can't find this case, you at least now know what you're getting into if you decide to pick up an InWin Chopin. So this has just been another stop in my adventures on Taobao, so links for this case are in the description, and if you click in the corner, you'll find a playlist of more interesting items that I've bought from the website. So that's it for this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, and thank you, really thank you to everyone who's left a comment on the White Knight video. I'm trying to incorporate your feedback, and hopefully this video is a step in the right direction. So thank you again, and I'll see you all in the next video.